All right, well, when it comes to war, our next guest points out that our elected leaders can learn a lot about the battle between good and evil from the Bible.
Here to explain, Fox News religion contributor Father Jonathan Morris.
Morning.
So, a lot going on.
There's a lot going on in the world, a lot of tension.
Absolutely, front and center, in addition to what happened in Charlottesville, is North Korea.
Yes.
The questions of good and evil, war or peace. If you're the President of the United States, you know, where do you draw that discernment that's necessary to make such a difficult decision?
Well, first of all, we're talking about this because we do have leaders both in the White House and in Congress, many of whom would say, I'm a Christian. And therefore, of course, they're going to use the Bible as a guide for their lives. And that's a very good thing. But you can't just pluck a verse out of the Bible and say, this justifies what I'm going to do. You need discernment, right? And I think the most famous passage in the whole Bible is, no, I'm not going to quiz it. It's do not kill. That would be my guess.
That was John 3:16.
Perhaps, but how about this? Do not kill. In the Old Testament, this is, and of course, Jesus in the New Testament reiterating that, do not kill. But sometimes a civil government has a responsibility to defend its people against an unjust aggressor. So it comes down to, how do I decide?
It's just like as a soldier, if you're going
Yes.
over to fight on behalf of your country, that's different than committing murder here at home.
In the end, the only just war is a war of self-defense. What do I mean by that? Life is so precious that no political leader has the right to be able to say, I'm going to kill you, when you're not in danger of being killed. And of course, in many of the wars that we're fighting today, it's because there is an unjust aggressor that's going after us, and the only way to stop them is by using force. So, but it takes a lot of wisdom to say, for example, in the case of North Korea, do I just go take somebody out like this? What does the Bible say? Do not kill. Okay, so, wait, what do? We have to make sure that using violence, using force is the last resort. Sometimes it might be necessary, but the very last resort also, a leader has to take into consideration, is this really going to work? For example, in Iraq, we see there are consequences to using force. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, this is a reminder. You say this is how we know that. I want to read just a verse. You were mentioning the Bible. This is Romans chapter 13. It says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities. Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Yeah,
you know, Pastor Jeffress, who's a friend of mine, used Romans 13 to say that President Trump has the divine authority to be able to take out Kim Jong-un, for example, in North Korea. We had a debate earlier this week on Fox and Friends, and I said, okay, one thing is having the authority by God to protect your people, no doubt.
Sure.
But you also have the responsibility, and this takes wisdom, to decide what is the best thing to do. So one thing is to have the authority to make political decisions. Another thing is the obligation, and this is so important, the obligation to make sure you're making right decisions. And sometimes taking out even a dictator who's doing evil might not be the wisest thing. What are the consequences? And I can't tell President Trump what to do there. That's the decision of a political leader. But they need, all of us need biblical principles to make those right judgments.
Yeah, to that point, one of the best prayers I ever heard was a very short one. It said, give me the wisdom to see what is right and then the courage to do it. Without the wisdom to see what's right, then courage could be pushing in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. Wisdom is what did Solomon pray for? When God said, you know, ask anything of me. He prayed for wisdom. He prayed for wisdom, because being a political leader is not easy, especially in these tense times.
Absolutely. Well, there are going to be a lot of people that are wanting to come hear you today and hear what your message is. As you said, it's a tumultuous time, but it was great to have you with us this morning.
Thank you,
Thanks, Father.
Thank you.